Hi, I'm Nikki from Find Me Crafting. If you're caring for a baby, there are a few things you can definitely count on. You're going to be feeding that baby quite often. You're going to be trying to get them to sleep at regular times, and you're going to be changing diapers pretty much all day long. When I had little kids, my goal for those changing times was to make it as quick and painless as possible for me and for the baby. To that end, my favorite, most useful tool was a great changing mat / changing pad. Now, I know that sounds really basic. Stick with me. This is a game changer. This thing is awesome. It is soft flannel on one side, and there's a piece of flannel in the center, making it really absorbent in case anything gets spilled or, put on the changing mat. The back side is waterproof. Nothing's getting through this thing. No matter where you set this, on a couch, on a carpet, at somebody else's house, nothing's getting through this thing. And it keeps baby cozy while you're changing their diaper. And because it's all washable fabric, anything that does get spilled or leaked onto this, just throw it into the washing machine. Easy peasy, and it's gonna come out looking great. I had one of these on every level of the house, in my diaper bag, in my car, anywhere I might possibly have had to change a diaper. This makes a really great baby gift, a new mom gift. Heck, make them a couple of them because they're gonna want them all over the place. They store up really flat and easy. This is a simple project. Come on, I'll show you how. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss any new patterns or projects. Here's what you're going to need for supplies. Let's start by talking fabric. You need 2 pieces of flannel. This is the part that you're going to be able to see. This is the outside part. And this part is just going to be in the middle. It's going to absorb a little more mess, and I like to choose white just because I know whatever I put on top, this isn't going to show through or clash in any way. So you can use any color for the center. I just think white is a little simpler. Each of these needs to be cut to 25 inches by 18 inches. And the last piece of fabric you're going to need is pull fabric. That stands for polyurethane laminate. This is the kind of fabric that they use if you're making homemade diaper covers. So this thing is not going to let any liquid through. This is where the magic happens right here. There are 2 sides, and one side feels more like fabric. It's got a little bit of a sheen to it, but the other side, the back side, well, what I think of as the back side anyway, is kind of rubbery. This is the actual waterproof side. That's the side I'm going to put on the inside of my changing mat, so it's not going to ever touch the baby. This side feels more like fabric. If you needed to use this side, you could also use this side for the baby to lay on. This piece will also be cut to 25 inches by 18 inches. You're going to either need some fabric scissors or a cutting mat and a rotary blade and the big cutting ruler, just so you can cut your fabric. Whatever you have, it'll work. You can totally do it with scissors. This is just a little bit easier if you have this. You're of course going to need a sewing machine and some matching thread. I'm just using all-purpose 100% polyester thread. And I highly recommend some sewing clips for this project because every time you put a hole in this fabric, you're creating a hole in the waterproof barrier. So we are going to sew the edge, obviously, but you want to have as few holes as possible in your fabric. So clipping everything together will just make sense versus using pins. And you'll need an iron and an ironing board. So once you have all your fabrics cut, the next thing to do is make what we call a fabric sandwich. So you're going to have all 3 pieces put together. The bottom piece is the white flannel or whatever color piece of flannel you're going to put in the center. There really doesn't look like there is a right side or wrong side of this fabric, but I have one that I like. It's a little bit smoother. That's the side I'm going to put face down, although it really doesn't matter because it's in the center. You won't see it either way. Then I'm going to put the pretty flannel, the one that I'm going to see at the end. That's going to be facing me, the pretty side up. And then for your last piece, for the pull fabric, the one that's waterproof, I want, like I said, the fabric side to be out on the outside of my project. So I'm going to lay that face down on top of my pretty flannel. So that means that the rubbery side will be facing up. So I'm going to line these all up and I'm going to clip around all my edges. And I would say if you were thinking of not clipping and just holding everything together and sewing, you can certainly do that so dangerously, however you want to go. But I will say that this stuff slides around a little bit And so I do really recommend clipping it in place so that all your edges stay where you want them to stay. So you're going to pin the entire outside, and you need to mark off I would say 4 to 6 inch section here. I like to give myself about 5 inches. That feels comfortable for me later. That's where we're going to turn this right side out. So I mark those with a different color clip, just so I know I'm going to stop sewing here. I'm going to start sewing actually right here and go around. But that just tells me, hey, don't sew this area. You could use a fabric marker for that. You could do whatever makes sense to you so that you don't sew that. It's time to bring it to the sewing machine, and I am going to sew around the entire outside with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, except for that section in between wherever you've marked off that you are not going to sew right now. Don't forget to backstitch here where you finished, and of course when you start, you want to do that too. Now, just to make it a little bit easier as you're turning it out, all of your corners, you're going to want to just cut the corner. Don't cut where you just stitched, don't cut your stitch line. But if you remove some of that bulk, it makes it easier to get a pointy, it'll turn out and look pointier. It'll look more like a corner. Now for the fun part, you're going to flip it right side out. And when you do that, you want to make sure that you have the pretty fabric out and the shiny part of this. You don't want to flip it here where you end up with 2 pieces of flannel and this is backward. So right here in between what you want to be your front and your back, you're going to just roll things out that hole. Make sure after you do this that you have all your corners all the way pushed out. I like to use a stick. This came in a bag of polyfill for me. You can use a chopstick or a pencil, whatever you want, or your finger. I just find I get a nice crisp corner if I use this versus just trying to do it by hand. So you stick it in there and you push out the corner. Make sure it's all the way out for all your corners. Now it's time to iron. I want to make sure that the pull fabric is toward the back. You kind of have to roll your seams here. And I'm just going to iron this so that it's a little flatter, and I know that the top is going to be on the top and the bottom is going to be on the bottom when I sew it. You can iron this part, but it's a lot easier to burn this than it is to burn this. So I recommend just ironing on the flannel. In the next step, we're going to be closing this hole that we turned the whole thing out through. So we need to fold this edge into the inside, and we want to fold it about 1/4 of an inch so that it looks the same as the part that you've already sewn shut. I'm rolling both pieces of flannel together so that they match up, and I'm going to clip those. Then I'm going to flip it over. And now I'm just going to roll the pull fabric so that it too lines up right where this side is lined up, where it's already sewn. I want it to all be even so you can't tell that there was a hole there. So I'm going to just roll that and then clip the whole thing. Back at the sewing machine, now you're just going to start right here. This is where my opening is, where I've pinned it. I'm going to start a little bit before that, and I'm just going to sew around here and close this and around the rest of the entire changing mat with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and that's just going to close this hole, and it's also going to top stitch so it keeps everything in place and looking perfect. And now your changing mat is ready to go. Look how easy it is to flip it open with just one hand. You can get one of these ready to use for yourself or to give away really quickly. Happy crafting!